it's not very well, it's not appropriate. Okay. Okay, so we'll quickly see some basics of this. Like this, lot of time like this. So now we'll move on to the real thing, but let's see if it opens now.
Dr. Meg, briefly tell me what an add-on exactly is.
Add-on?
Mm-hmm. You know how sometimes you go to, or you get, most of the time I see them is like in the email or something like that, they'll ask you about an add-on. But what briefly is that?
It's very general term. Can you be more specific what an add-on is? What do you mean by an add-on?
That's what the terminology they use when they send this like error.
Mostly add in the one using Microsoft Word or mostly using Microsoft.
No, it's not. I don't like most. It's mostly happening in the lab, and they're on the internet site, right? And then they'll say something like, here's an add-on. You have to, then they ask you, do you want to add-on or whatever. But you can see you can see the actual website, but it'll pop up a message. Do you want to add? And I really don't know if it's a good or a bad thing.
One reason could be you might have, for example, it's like when you sign up to Secure Shell using from your local machine. The first time you try to connect to Red Hat 3, the server, right? It will ask whether to accept that machine as a recognized machine from your local system point of view. If you say yes, you don't have to do it every time. It's like that, when you visited a website, right, there may be some behind-the-scene execution that took place to load, say, the advertisements over there or something that is part of the web page. If you want it to be validated every time you want to load, when you load the web page, you have to spend some time for all these things to be loaded up. So if you add on that, it will probably don't require you to wait, for a long time. So it will be automatically loaded by default. It won't be validated or anything like that. So it could improve the experience of the user in terms of the time it takes to load up the page. But it could be a security issue. You don't want to add on all these things all the time.
Yeah, I say no because I don't know what it is.
Yes.
I'm gonna take a print screen and let you see it.
Okay. Let's see if we can run. Okay. So we'll very briefly see about SQL injection attacks, and then we really move on to the other code injection attacks. So what we are going to see from now on in this chapter is what is called a code injection attack, which means you would run one code inside another code, okay? And if you don't really validate the inputs you pass to the first code, then it could really mess up the overall program in which that code is running. So for example, all of you are doing some database project, right? So if you write a database application that requires users to pass some inputs, like say you develop a web page that has a username, password, all these things, and you have a user table, right? So I get the username and password, I need to validate this with the database, and after I validate, I need to load up some page or whatever I have to display. So a malicious user wants to get around this. He doesn't have the valid username and password for that database, right? So if you look at this SQL statement, there's a customer database where you have some users and passwords. So this is how you could have coded this in, say, part of your main program, say in a Java program or any program, okay? So this is a SQL query embedded inside another program, all right? So now if someone passes, say, the valid name, say for example, this is my username, you see the way you have coded it, this is all built in as part of the code. Only place where you really will insert is this username. So if I pass for this NATJSU, that will be really embedded into this, and similarly for the password the other way, so it will be directly embedded to this. Okay. So, but when you execute, you see all the single quotes are there already. The single quote, it ends with a single quote inside this and has this and all these things. But of course, there is this double quote to indicate that's a string. Okay. So now this is a valid input, but someone can get around this by entering an input which looks something like this. So this is again the statement. So for the username, you see that it starts with this single quote and then it waits for the actual username, right? So that it ends that with this single quote at the end. Now I can pass something like this. I can end the single quote with another single quote and then say or 1 equals 1. And I don't need this because this is really what this single quote. So if I pass a carefully crafted input like this, right? Same thing for the password. What does it mean? When you really embed this, it will become something like this. Name equals blank space or 1 equals 1 and password equals a blank space or 1 equals 1. So what does it mean? The blank space is nothing there, or 1 equals 1. 1 equals 1 is always true. So, and you have an OR logical operator. So even whatever is this is always true. So OR, something OR and true is the overall thing is always true. And the password is also elevating to true. So which means whatever the username and password you are entering, you could log into the system. Of course, the commercial databases don't let you to do all these things because they would have tested all these things. But when you're doing it for your projects in your courses, right, you will have to implement this. If you want someone to not to use this option of penetrating into your database. So people who are doing the software engineering projects or security point of view, anything that has to do with the database, you have to incorporate SQL injection attacks. This is a common feature. Okay? So it's called a code injection attack. So it's very simple to penetrate and simple to avoid also. What you have to do is basically sanitize the input. Sanitize means before you directly embed the input that you get from the user, go through the input, which means pass the input, scan character by character, and see if it has any special character. Because they have to use some of the single quotes and all the special characters to kind of match to what is being required in the rest of the SQL query, right? So if you can scan for the input and if it has any of the special characters, then you kind of don't execute that. Okay, so it's very simple to test for that and avoid it. At the same time, if it's not there, someone can easily penetrate into a database. Right, so this way someone can really list everything in the database. Okay, so later we'll see also some of the other ways someone can penetrate, and then we'll move on. Okay.